Alright guys, welcome back. It's Remsen Noire here, head coach at Tribe by Noire. And what I'm going to be talking about today is the 3 main training routines and which one works the most effectively for muscle growth and fat loss. So, let's dive into it. Alright, so before I dive into this topic, I want to clarify. There's a difference between working out and training. Now, working out is pretty much what you do in the gym. Whether you're going in there and you're just randomly just working out different muscle groups and trying out different machines, doing the cardio, right? Just the physical work. But training implies planning, right? It's premeditated. It's some type of regimen. It's a routine, right? Training is where the big results happens, right? That's where you're working out, but doing it deliberately, right? There's a specific goal in mind behind everything you do in your training routine. So let's get into the 3 main training routines. All right, so to start, we're going to talk about the body part split, or as I like to call the bodybuilding split routine. And so what this is you have a designated muscle group for a designated day. And what you would do is you would get all of your training volume in, as much training volume as you can for that muscle group on that day, and then that muscle group would rest for the rest of the week. So you're only training that muscle group once a week, so you can just really go hard on that muscle group in that given training session. So the goal behind this is to fine-tune the physique, right? It's really just purely focused on building as much muscle as you can in an isolated form, right? So let's say you're a bodybuilder, you're just training for aesthetics, you're not training for sports performance and things like that. So you're not necessarily trying to practice a skill or specific movements, right? Or just physical output. You're really just trying to stimulate muscle, right? So when you're just trying to stimulate skeletal muscle, the main thing is just getting in the volume, that training volume to really pump that muscle and stimulate that muscle as much as possible, and then allow it to recover for the rest of the week so that it can grow to maximum capacity, right? To get maximum recovery. So this is more of an advanced thing, right? It can really work for anyone straight across the board, but it's really just meant for more so people who are seasoned and people who can actually sustain that amount of training volume at one time, right? If you're a beginner, you may not necessarily be able to do, 4 sets of 10 on flat bench, incline bench, decline bench, then dumbbells, then flies, and then 4 different tricep exercises from all kinds of angles, right? If you're a beginner, you may not really be able to do that. You don't really have the capacity, the training capacity to do that. So it's not really ideal because you're more open to injury doing that, right? You're more susceptible to overtraining, right? And tearing and spraining things and different things like that. So this is more so just for the person who is training for aesthetics and the person who is just trying to fine-tune their physique and build specific muscles as much as possible. So what a body part split would look like is you would have Monday, right, as chest and triceps. Tuesday would be back and biceps, right? Wednesday would be a rest day. Thursday would be a heavy leg day, right? Friday would be arms, right? Something light before the weekend if you're going out or whatever, especially if you're going dancing. You don't want your leg day to be on the same day that you're going out partying or whatever, right? So Friday would be that arm day. Saturday can be a rest day or an accessory day. And when I say accessory, I mean building up odds and ends like medial delts, trapezes, forearms, right? Calves, things like that. And Sunday can be the same thing. It can be a rest or an accessory day. Something that's, if it's going to be a training day, it'll be a light accessory day, just focusing on a small muscle group, or maybe even some type of conditioning to improve some type of athletic output. But for the most part, this bodybuilding split is going to be for people who are just training for aesthetics. It's not ideal for body fat, for dropping body fat, right, as efficiently as possible. And this is the reason why bodybuilders will do cardio every day, you know, for 20, 30, 45, or even an hour, right? So they do and it will be like a slow walk or a light run, right? Or going on the Stairmaster, things like that. Nothing really intense, just something to get you into that fat burning zone to compensate for the body part split. So that's pretty much that. So on the other end of the spectrum, you have full body, right? And full body is mostly used by athletes, right? People who are training for a specific skill. Now, full body is also great for fat loss because it involves the whole body. So it's more likely to speed up your heart rate, right? Get that metabolic rate up and sustain it at a much higher level, right? Because you're not isolating muscles and really just focusing on pumping muscles. But these are big compound movements, right? So let's say, for instance, you have an Olympic weightlifter and they're doing snatch, clean, and jerk, right? Or a CrossFitter where they're doing overhead kettlebell swings, snatches, they're doing kipping pull-ups where they're swinging the whole body and things like that, sprints and sled pushes, right? All of these things are all full body, right? Because you're working everything all the way from the arms all the way down to the legs, right? Triple extension movements and things like that. It could be a lot more fun, right? A lot more stimulating, and it's easier to build skill, right? Doing full body because you're doing specific lifts multiple times a week. So if you're doing full body, chances are you're doing squats, you're doing some type of leg movement, deadlifts, or some type of hip hinging movements several times a week, which gives you time to practice, right? You can really practice these movements and really be active and really increase your overall athletic capability. And this is great for fat loss, right? Because again, that metabolic rate being elevated and kept at that elevated rate on a consistent basis. Now, even though it's great for weight loss in general, right, or fat loss in general, it's not exactly the best way to go for building muscle because you're not really isolating specific muscle groups, right? You're not hitting biceps, you're not hitting triceps where you're just working that muscle, that, you know, elbow flexion and extension. You're not really just focusing on the medial delt with the lateral raises and things like that. You're doing big explosive movements, right? Just getting out there having a blast. So that's on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? So you got, again, the body part split, which is primarily for muscle building, and then full body, which is mostly for weight loss and body fat loss. But there is something in between where you get the best of both worlds, and I'm gonna get into that next. All right, so I'm gonna get into what I like to call the hybrid routine, the upper-lower split. So basically what this type of routine does is it takes elements from one end of the spectrum and elements from the other and merges them together, right, to become a more complete program. So what you can do here is you get in the volume of the body part split, you get in the metabolic increase or the heightened metabolic rate of full body, and you also get the element of practice and consistency, an increased frequency of how often you hit a specific muscle group, which is also something from the full body split, right? So what this looks like is you'd have Monday, which would be a lower body day, consisting of, let's say, squats, deadlifts, lunges, hip bridges, things like that, right? And whatever mobility drills you need to do in order to increase your mobility. The following day would be upper body. That's more of a push-pull kind of routine, right? So, for instance, chest press followed by rows, right? Or overhead presses followed by pull-ups or lat pull-downs, right? So, horizontal pushing and pulling and vertical pushing and pulling. And then Wednesday would be a rest day, Thursday would be another lower body day, and then Friday would be another upper body day, and then you'd rest the weekend or do accessory work on the weekend. So on your leg day, you'd get in your heavy sets where you would have the lower reps but the higher weight to really focus on training strength, and then after you get in all your heavy working sets, you would do a lighter weight and more volume. What that does is that gives you more of the muscle building aspects of the split routine, right? Remember I talked about the volume. Actually getting a muscle to grow, yes, it's about lifting big weight, but it's also about volume, right? Training volume. How many reps are you doing and how many sets are you doing? How much tension is that muscle on and how long is that tension on that muscle, right? And that's what encourages the growth. Now, the thing that's so unique for this is the fact that it caters very well to beginners, which the split routine doesn't exactly do. So the reason for this is because you now get to practice specific movements more frequently. So now you know in the full body routine, you would, let's say, squat more than once a week. You'd be doing it maybe even 3 times a week. So in the upper body, in the upper lower split, you would squat twice a week, deadlift twice a week, right? You would bench twice a week, row twice a week, right? You'd be doing these movements more often, and so this serves as practice, right? Because now you're doing the movement a lot more frequently, which means that you're learning it a lot faster. So this is a really big deal, especially for a movement that's complicated, like let's say a squat, where you have a deep, right, bend at the ankle, right? Really flexing that ankle to get into the bottom position of the squat. A deep knee bend, a deep hip bend, right? And really stabilizing and adjusting the angle of the torso while locking in the upper back and all these type of things, right? The squat can be very technical, whether it be a back squat or a front squat and things like that. So if you really want to train the muscle the right way and in the most efficient way possible, you really need to practice the execution of the movement, which is why this is so good for beginners, right? Because you just practice it more, like I said. So as you practice the movement more, you're still getting in the same volume as a bodybuilding split. You're just breaking it up where you do 50% of that volume one day and 50% of that volume another day. So you're not just really wrecking that muscle and possibly overtraining it and causing yourself to get injured. So you're just splitting up the volume but still getting in the same amount of training volume, which means you're getting in the same amount of muscle growth. And you're also getting into practice. So it's safer, it's more conducive to beginners, and it's that perfect balance between maximum muscle growth and maximum fat loss potential. Alright, so for those of you who enjoy reading, I also wrote about this same topic in an article in my blog, right? So I'll post the link down below to the written version of this topic, so you can go ahead and check that out. And I go a little bit more in depth as far as programming, what the training routine would actually look like. Of course, like the video if you like the video. Leave a comment. Let me know how this information has helped you, if I've clarified anything for you, right? Do you agree or do you disagree? Leave it down below in the comments. Let's get some type of debate going. Let's get some type of conversation going. I want to know what you guys think. And having said that, I will see you in the next video. Peace.